Hey there, this is Sid and today we shall solve a SQL problem from StrataScratch. The title of the problem is Find the most profitable location. It's listed as a hard problem and the ID of the problem is 2033. As always, we shall start off by having a look at the input table in Excel. So there are two input tables. The first one is signups and the second one is transactions. The sign-up table gives you the list of sign-up information of users with the sign-up ID, which I believe recognizes each user uniquely, the start date and end date of the sign-up, the plan ID, which is not relevant to this problem, and the location of the user. So that's a sign-up table. The next input table is a transactions table. I believe each of these rows uniquely identify a journey or a transaction. I'm saying a journey because this problem appeared in Uber. So for example, the first record lists a journey taken by the person whose ID was 100. This was the date of the journey and the total amount was 24. So these are our two tables. Now let's go back to the problem statement. It says that find the most profitable location. Write a query that calculates the average sign-up duration and the average transaction amount for each location, and then compare these two measures together by taking the ratio of the average transaction amount and average duration for each location. So first, we have to find out the average sign-up duration. To find that, we have to go to the sign-ups table and for each location find the difference between the sign-up stop date and the sign-up start date. That would give you the total duration of sign up for that particular ID, and you do this for all the users for a particular location and then take the average, and then you do that for all the other locations as well. The next quantity to find is the average transaction amount, again for each location. Now this transactions table does not have the location, so you would have to first bring the location onto the transactions table from the signups table. To do that, you can use the sign up ID as the joining key. So for example, for the first record here, if you add a location, that location would be Rio de Janeiro because sign up ID 100 belongs to Rio de Janeiro. So once you have the location up here in the transactions table, all you need to do again is for each location find the average amount, and that would give you the average transaction amount for each location. And lastly, you take a ratio of these two, and then you have to display your output by sorting them from the highest to the lowest of this newly computed quantity, the ratio. So I hope now the problem statement is clear to you. Let's go through solving this problem first in Microsoft Excel and then in SQL. So I've created an intermediate table here. This is called intermediate table 1. All this intermediate table does is adds a new row called the sign up duration. The sign up duration is nothing but the sign up stop date minus the sign up end date. So for how long a particular user was signed up. So now that you have the sign up duration for each of the records in the transaction table in this intermediate table 1, getting the average sign up duration for each location is pretty straightforward. That has been done in this pivot table. It gives you for each location the average duration. So for example, you find out all the rows where you have Rio in this table, add up the corresponding sign up durations and then divide that out by the number of times Rio appears in these rows. So that takes care of the first problem, finding the mean duration. The next problem is to find out the mean revenue or the mean amount. So as I pointed out, the transactions table does not have the location. So the first thing to do is to get the location in the transactions table. Now to calculate the mean amount, we would not really need all these columns. We would only need the transaction amount column along with the location column. Here I have created an intermediate table which contains the location column. Of course, I need to have the sign up ID column here because otherwise I cannot look up the location. So the sign up ID 100 had spent an amount 24.9 and the location of that user was Rio de Janeiro. So this sign up ID 100 may appear again in this table because this is a transaction table. So for example, sign up ID 102 appears 5 times here. So now this intermediate table has the information we need to get the average amount, the location and the amount. To get the average amount per location, we have used a pivot table here. Again, this pivot table is constructed out of these two columns of the intermediate table 2, and it gives us the average amount or average revenue for each of these locations. And here's the final output table. So it takes the mean duration table, puts them in the first two columns, and then looks up the mean revenue for each of these locations from the mean revenue pivot table, and then finally calculates a ratio. This is our final output table. And if you go back and check the expected output it does agree. So for example, Mexico City has 0.385, Mexico City has 0.385, Rio has 0.495, Rio has 0.495. The only issue that I see with this output table here is that it is not really sorted by the ratio, which was an ask in the problem statement. So now that we know how to solve this problem in Microsoft Excel, let's try to solve it in SQL. As always, I have written the SQL query in Notepad++ because that's where it's easiest to see. So the first CTE gives us the mean revenue per location. This is created by joining two tables, the transactions table along with the sign-ups table. Why do we need to perform this join? Because if you recall, the transactions table does not contain the location. So the location has to be obtained from the sign-ups table. That's all it does. So I'm joining the transactions table with the sign-up table using the sign-up ID as a joining key. So now I have the location as well after we perform the join. So once I have obtained the location from the sign-ups table, all I have to do is for each location, find out the average transaction amount. That amount is available in the transactions table, which is the left table of my left join. I call that column mean revenue, and finally I group by the location. If I run this city alone in the SQL editor, you will see that it does give us the average revenue per location. Here you can see Houston has 22.567, Las Vegas has 25.163, and so on. So this takes care of the average revenue part of the problem. The next is to find out the average duration per location. In fact, to find out the average duration, we don't even have to perform a join, because if you recall, the sign-ups table has all the information that we need to calculate the mean duration per location. So what it does is, for each location, it calculates the difference in days between the sign-up start date and the sign-up end date. So this date diff function takes three arguments. The second and third arguments are the start and end dates, and the first argument is the format in which you want the difference, whether you want it in days, months, weeks, or years, and so on. So this date diff function calculates the number of days between the sign-up start date and the sign-up end date, and then I multiply this date difference in number of days by 1.0 and then calculate the average to ensure that the arithmetic is float. And finally, I do a group by using the location. So if we have a quick look at the second CTE in the SQL editor, we shall see that this one does indeed give us the mean duration for each location. Houston has 83.25, Las Vegas has 94.44444, and so on. So now I need to combine these two outputs. So I have in the same table the average revenue as well as the average duration. To do that, I join these two cities, average revenue per location and mean duration per location, and the joining key is location, because if you recall, both of these tables have the location column. And in the select clause, I keep the location, and then from the mean duration CTE, I take the mean duration. From the mean revenue per location CTE, I take the mean revenue, and then I include one more column, which is the ratio of the mean revenue and the mean duration columns. I think I can make a quick modification to this one, because I believe they expect the output rounded to 3 decimal places. And then finally, I order this output by the newly generated artificial column, which is the ratio of the mean revenue and mean duration. So if I copy this entire SQL query and run it in the editor window, I'll get this output, which will give us the location alongside the mean duration, mean revenue, and the ratios. And if you quickly compare this with the output provided by StrataScratch, you will see that Mexico City, which has a ratio of 0.385, agrees with what we have here. Rio, which has a ratio of 0.495, does agree with what we have here. New Jersey, 0.24, and so on and so forth. The only difference between our output and the output provided here is that the output provided here is not sorted by ratio descending. We have done that in our output. So I believe I was able to explain the solution to this problem. I'll come up with solutions to more SQL problems from StrataScratch. Till then, please stay tuned.